Thank you very much for this invitation. Thanks to the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, to the evaluation team for an excellent job, and thank you, colleagues, for coming and taking part in this important discussion. UniPID, the Finnish University Partnership for International Development, is a development research and development cooperation network, comprises 10 research universities in Finland. Our membership embodies a broad range of concrete experiences in academic collaboration with Southern scholars and universities. All of our member institutions have implemented HEIKI and NSS projects over the years from the beginning. UniPID greatly appreciates the opportunity to present comments on the outcomes of the evaluation. Once again, thanks to the Ministry and to the evaluation team for their open and consultative approach. We were, as UniPID and individually as member institutions, we were consulted at various times over the process. So we feel that we did have an opportunity to be heard, and we appreciate that greatly. A couple weeks ago, the UniPID board met to discuss the evaluation report, or the draft that was available then, and this engendered a long and spirited discussion. It was obvious that this, from the discussion, that this is a program which is of great importance to our members. Intellectual collaboration, intellectual partnership between Finnish scholars and scholars in the South is for us not just a subsidiary kind of activity, but it's the core of what we do and how we see the role of universities in the world today. So having a chance to think deeply about how this program should be developed is something that inspired us. There are naturally many different perspectives among our members. We have different experiences, and the issues at stake are very complex. Not only because we are many stakeholders, but also because the cultural and the political and the economic differences between Finnish universities and our collaborators in the South are great. Nonetheless, there was a fairly clear consensus that emerged around a number of issues, and in the short time I'd like to briefly try to sum up some of the main points where we were more or less unanimous. Academics are never unanimous about anything, but more or less agreed on these things. First of all, as the evaluation report astutely points out, HEIKI and NSS programs have been important vehicles for internationalization of Finnish higher education. Whether this is by design or default, this is nonetheless the fact. HEIKI and NSS are an instrument of higher education policy in Finland and not only in the South. We are going, as universities in Finland, through very rapid structural changes. One element of this is opening up to the world and changing our way of doing science and of thinking about humankind and the fate of our planet. We are not alone in this, but it is something which is essential what's going on in universities at the moment. Internationalization in Finnish universities has a very strong bias toward the OECD group of countries and academic practices, and then to be by default or by fact, the contact point between Finnish universities and the vast majority of humankind and their problems and the way that they think has been through these programs. So it is difficult for us to think of these programs without thinking about their impact on internationalization. And we think that as UniPID, we think that there is a need to acknowledge more clearly a kind of fundamental incoherence in current higher education policy. On the one hand, the resources for our universities' basic functions are allocated through the Ministry of Education and Culture according to an algorithm that stresses quantitatively variable indices of academic excellence, excellent performance. At the strategic level, the Ministry of Education and Culture does encourage universities to strengthen global responsibility, and our participation in capacity building in the South is one expression of that. But this is not reflected in the funding criteria. We are not rewarded for this, but we are encouraged to do that. On the other hand, the Ministry of Foreign Affairs intervention in higher education policy here in Finland through these instruments rewards investments which are unlikely to be reflected in our quantitative indices of performance. Participating in these programs is not likely to advance excellence in science, produce advanced degrees, and generate publications in high-quality, peer-reviewed journals to a notable effect. And this is how we are funded, and this is how we keep our jobs and keep our students funded. So these are central concerns for us. Given the grave resource stress that most of our member universities are currently experiencing, it is probable that priority is being given and will be given into the future to pursuing the Ministry of Education and Culture's algorithm. Our university leaderships must focus on those particular criteria of performance. But in order to optimize the development impact of academic collaborations between North and South, these contradictory policy goals should be brought into clearer alignment. Put simply, our institutions and our scholars should not be sanctioned if they choose to invest in North-South academic partnerships, in building the kind of long-term partnerships that are being proposed. The redesigned North-South partnership programs means and should be consistent with overall incentive structure of Finnish higher education policy. And I think that this is a message not only to the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, but also to the Ministry of Education and Culture. I think we would welcome more dialogue around this between these two ministries. A second point, we note that many of the evaluation team's recommendations would be consistent with such a principle of enhancing coherence in higher education policy here, but some are clearly not. On the plus side, we strongly agree that long-term, intellectually intimate partnerships involving joint research, joint supervision, and mentoring would be important, and we would encourage having these elements included in future such programs. Such activities will lead to degrees and can form the basis for important scientific products, joint publication, while allowing us together to address core capacity buildings of our southern partners. On the other hand, concentrating on partnerships as proposed with young rural universities is not likely to enhance our institution's quantitative performance indices. Indeed, we don't really find a compelling evidence in the team's finding that would support such a radical recommendation. Generally speaking, UniPID is not happy with the report's evident intent to introduce narrow technical criteria for the selection of partners. While it may make good sense to channel support to fewer partnerships and to better coordinate Finnish collaborations with a given southern institution, basing selection criteria on rigid geographical characteristics, we feel, is not justified. As the Minister of Foreign Affairs support to higher education sector develops, it would be wiser to concentrate efforts on further cultivating and deepening partnerships with those universities in which collaboration has already proved productive. New partnerships, and there should be obviously new partnerships in the future, these should obviously respond to the partner's real needs. But it is equally important to build collaboration around common academic interests. This is how universities work. Final point, UniPID responds with grave concern to the suggestion that already meager funding to development research, which is now being channeled through the Academy of Finland should be subordinated to narrow instrumental ends. It is vital, we feel, to maintain a funding window which is guided by basic criteria of academic innovativeness, autonomy, and excellence. Development researchers in Finland have long, for decades, advocated on behalf of increasing the scope of applied research related to external development interventions in Finland's partner countries. We train our students to do this, and we'd be happy to see these skills put to better use. We would warmly welcome investments in applied research at funding levels prevailing in most like-minded countries, Sweden, Denmark, Norway, the Netherlands, not to mention our fellow EU partner states like Germany, France, and the UK. As important as it is to apply scientific expertise and knowledge directly to development project and policy work, this should not occur at the expense of knowledge production based on principles of academic autonomy and excellence. Mr. Olkonen's suggestion that the collaboration between the Ministry of Foreign Affairs and the academic community should be subject to a holistic review is a good one and a timely one, and UniPID would be very eager and willing to participate in such a discussion. Well, time did not allow me to touch on all of the important points or to develop our views in a very nuanced fashion. Luckily, there is time here for discussion. I can see that there's a great many colleagues in the audience who will obviously want to amend or correct the views as I brought them out here. UniPID has written a statement on the evaluation report, and our coordinator, Johanna Kivimäki, would be happy to provide that to you on request. Thank you very much.